Welcome back. We are counting down to when the polls close in Ottawa's municipal election Monday night at 8 o'clock. And starting at that time, we'll have live coverage of the results and analysis of what it will mean for the next 4 years right here on Rogers TV and also simulcast on 1310 News Radio. So I hope you can join us then to find out what municipal government is going to look like over the course of the next 4 years from now through till 2022. And we do know that there will be at least 4 new faces on City Council because there are 4 incumbents who are not running for re-election. So we'll talk about those wards now. And Steve Desroches, maybe we can start with you because in at least one of these wards, it's because somebody promised not to seek a third term, a self-imposed term limit. Mark Taylor in Bay Ward said he would serve 2 terms and that would be it. You did that as well, and you kept your promise. There are others, though, who made the same promise and are running again for election, which is interesting. And maybe you can comment a little bit on that, because there are people who said, I will serve 2 terms and then voluntarily withdraw, and they didn't end up doing it. But Mark Taylor did. Yeah,
when I ran in 2006, I think there was very much a mood that people wanted to see some turnover on council. So I did commit to serving 2 terms and honored that in 2014. Some others have, and it doesn't look like they're not following through with that commitment. Ultimately, it's going to be up to their electorate to decide whether they agree with them or not. In some cases, they may have some valid reasons that there's significant projects underway that they want to see to the finish line. But they'll have to defend that with their electorate. But you can see in the case of Bay Ward, it has opened up an interesting race, and we will see some new faces as a result of Mark keeping his word and committing to just 2 terms.
So let's start there in Bay Ward. Interesting race. What do you expect to see from that? There are several people running to replace Mark Taylor. Not as many as in Orleans, of course, where there are 17 candidates. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, well, I think you can see that all the candidates, I think, are working hard, whether it be Kavanaugh or Dan or Darth. They're all working extremely hard there to win the vote, and they're going to have to, because the incumbent does have a significant edge, I think, and when it is an open race, the electorate will be doing some extra thinking in terms of who they're going to pick. I think Kavanaugh, having served as a trustee, likely has some advantage because she would have had some profile in her role as a school board trustee that would have taken into various nooks and crannies of the ward where she may be able to take advantage of that. But I can see the other ones are working extremely hard, and they're certainly going to need to try and sway voters in their favor.
Yeah. Sue, what do you think about the race in Bay Ward?
Well, I hate to echo people, but absolutely what Steve is saying. Certainly, Kavanaugh, I think she's won a really strong campaign. She's very solid on the ideas. She's very, very much a representative for Bay Ward. But, there are some other strong candidates there. Obviously, many people know Don Dransfield. That one is going to be interesting. And, of course, when you have that many people there, it's not, it's a much different race if you have 2 people head-to-head. And this is everyone on this list. And, I've read their material. I've watched your all-candidate debate. Most of them are pretty strong. And so that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Jonathan, any thoughts on Bay Ward?
I think it's predominantly a 2-person race. I think it's Teresa Kavanaugh and Don Dransfield. And the 2 who have sort of the machines behind them, for lack of a better word. There's no partisan politics officially in municipal elections, but the people who are drawn to politics are going to be drawn to politics at different levels, so they naturally are going to have those networks. So these are big advantages for Kavanaugh and for Dransfield, who have both run at different levels of government. I think,
and have political spouses as well.
Yes, that is a whole other thing.
Interestingly enough, but and certainly, as Jonathan just said, having that sort of ready-made machine behind you is huge.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually come out to probably hurt Dransfield with the recent robocalls by his wife speaking as an MP, promoting him. It doesn't break municipal rules. She may have broken some of her the code of ethics for MPs, but she didn't break any municipal rules. But it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. One other point I want to make about this is that compared to last time, I found this to be a much more positive and a much more respectful campaign. Last time, in Bay Ward specifically. Last time, there was a bit of sort of a comic relief aspect with Brendan Mertens, as I'm sure you remember.
Yep.
Although he, over the course of the campaign, really grew as a candidate and started to study up on the issues. But there was a lot of bickering between Taylor and Cullen, and then it wound up going to Twitter between Cullen and the mayor. And
bickering between Cullen and Taylor? That's kind of hard to believe, Jonathan.
I haven't
you
seen...
said with full sarcasm.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that level of sort of, not nastiness, pettiness, let's say. And so that's been refreshing. And I think that there have been some really good ideas presented. I think Kavanaugh both probably has the strongest campaign, and I think she seems like the strongest candidate as well. So it'll be interesting to see. And if she does come in, that's one more step towards gender balance.
Right, and we'll talk more about that coming up, because there are only 4 females on Ottawa City Council right now, and it'll be interesting to see if there are more as a result of this election, or the same, or fewer. So, Sue, let's talk about Canada North, and I think a lot of people see that as a 3-way race between Jenna Sudds, David Gourley, and Matt Muirhead. What do you think about that race? This is replacing Marianne Wilkinson, who's not running again.
Yeah, and again, as you say, there 3 strong candidates. Jenna Sudds, of course, is being endorsed by outgoing councillor Marianne Wilkinson. Gourley is the choice of Mayor Jim Watson, Gourley's wife. And I always hesitate to talk about marital relationships, but regardless, I am. And his wife, Daniel McGee, works in Jim Watson's office. And then there's Matt Muirhead, who I think he's a very solid candidate. When I watched your debate, I thought he... obviously, I go in with a bit of a bent. I've known him politically for many years. I think he really cares about the ward. I don't see him as someone who wants to be a city councillor, but wants to make a difference in his ward. And I think that's maybe for others a fine distinction. But I think there are some people who just want to be a councillor. Certainly, all 3 of them have their strengths and they have their weaknesses. I know that. Some have described it as a fight between the other 2. I certainly think Matt Muirhead, for me, is closer to the top, but we won't really know until the election, will we?
It's so hard to predict, and there's very few ways to gauge those kinds of things. Steve, some quick thoughts on Canada North, and then we'll move quickly to a couple of other ridings.
No, I think it's a 3-way race out there, and you can see they're working extremely hard. The big question mark for me is going to be voter turnout on Monday. And that will be, I think, a big decider in some of these wards that are wide open. If there's going to be a good voter turnout, then that is going to help the people that obviously were able to sort of drive their people. But with a kind of a fizzled kind of mayoral ticket, I'm not sure we're going to see a huge turnout. I hope we do, but I'm not sure we're going to see that. So that might affect some of those newer races. We had a good turnout at the advance poll, and I'm sure every candidate was driving their people to get to the advance polls so that they have a vote in the box and don't have to worry about Monday. But I think voter turnout will be a big factor in some of these open races.
All right.
Can I ask, do you mind if I ask Steve that? Because I'm fascinated by the increased turnout in the early polling. Do you think it's just better campaigns? I can't explain it. I have no idea.
I'm equally scratching my head, and I think especially in those open ones, as a candidate, you want to get your people to the advance poll because you want to avoid a situation where it's election day and someone has a sick child or they have to go to the veterinarian for some reason and they can't get to the voting station.
You also don't want them to change their mind in the meantime, right? So once the vote is cast, it's cast.
A big part of an effective campaign is driving people to the advance polls, and so that's probably underlying some of those races, particularly in Bay Ward.
We have to move quickly, so maybe I'll ask each of you to talk about both Innis and Orleans, 2 East End wards where the incumbents are not seeking election. Orleans, of course, has 17 candidates, so I think that one's a very tricky business to try to make predictions about. Somebody could win with 15% of the vote in that ward. So, Jonathan, tell us about those 2 races.
Orleans is overwhelming. I have gone through as much as I can on Orleans. given time constraints and given what's out there. The interesting thing I've found is that in both of those races, some of the strongest candidates that I have picked out personally have all been women. And I don't want to harp on this gender balance thing. I don't want to say that that's the only thing worthwhile. But in Innis, I look at this as a race between Donna Leith Goodbranson and Laura Dudas, both of whom seem very strong and very capable. I think the other two candidates have their good points, but I don't think they're quite as strong as those two. So I expect that race to be won by a woman. So I think that that's going to be yet another step. And Miranda Gray, Murray Brownhill, Shannon Kramer, and Catherine Kitts have all impressed me. Kramer's a little younger, so that's sometimes a bit of a mark against someone, but she's got some interesting ideas. The other three are very active in their communities. They seem to have a real good handle on stuff. So that's what I'm looking at. Okay.
Sue, very quickly, your thoughts on those two wards?
I'll be very quick on Orleans because I've been doing endorsements and I had to admit defeat. I don't know enough to make an endorsement, although there are several people there that certainly are strong candidates. The fascinating thing for me in Innis is that you actually have 4 strong candidates. I agree. I see it as a contest. Ultimately, it's going to be between Donna, Leith Goodbranson, and Laura. I've known them both for years. I think Donna's going to end up with the edge, but I have no crystal ball.
Okay. Steve?
You know what? I'll give Bob Minette credit that in stepping down, he didn't endorse someone. He wanted to leave it to the people. But on the other hand, I kind of wish he would have because it's such a wide open race that I really just don't know. There's so many voices out there. So it's going to be, what will be interesting in that is someone's going to win it with a very, very low total. And they're going to have some work. They're going to have some work to do to gain the confidence and trust of that entire ward because their number will be so small in terms of the number of supporters that they have.
Comparable to George DeRuse in Osgood last time, right? Because there was a pretty significant number of people running in that ward last time, and he won. I can't remember the number, but
17%.
Yeah, it was,
I think technically in Orleans you could win with something like 9% of the vote.
Right. Yeah. That's
well. It just shows how many people just respected Bob Minette, though, that they left the ward alone, even though they wanted to represent it.
Right, and that it takes 17 people to replace him, basically.
Don't tell him that.
Very highly of him.
But only, what's that?
They all speak very highly of him. Yeah.
But only one person can, and that's what we'll find out on Monday. All right, so those are the 4 wards where there will be a new face on City Council. Will there be others? Will there be incumbents who are defeated in Monday's municipal election? We'll talk about that when we come back.